Layoffs always feel sudden. One day, everything is normal. People are working, meetings are happening, projects are moving, and then the next day, someone is gone, and nobody saw it coming. Or at least, that is what it feels like. Because here is what most people do not realize. Layoffs do not actually come out of nowhere. They follow a pattern. Most people just do not see it until it is too late. The truth is this: layoffs only feel sudden if you are only looking at the last stage. Companies do not wake up one day and decide to lay people off. What looks sudden on the outside is usually the result of weeks, sometimes months, of decisions being made quietly inside the business, and those decisions show up in small ways first. Subtle enough that most people brush them off, but consistent enough that once you know what to look for, you start seeing them clearly. Layoffs do not start when people get cut. They start when the business starts changing direction, and that shift usually moves through three stages. Stage one, business weakens. The first stage is quiet, nothing dramatic, no announcements, no panic, but something feels off. First, revenue starts slowing. Even if you are not in sales, you may feel it indirectly. Fewer wins being celebrated, targets quietly getting missed, growth conversations that used to feel exciting now feel cautious. Second, leadership language begins to change. Words like efficiency, optimization, cost discipline start appearing more often. Individually, they may mean nothing, but when they start showing up together, pay attention. You may also hear layoffs happening across the industry. Competitors cutting staff, peers slowing hiring, weak results from similar companies. When pressure hits one company, it often reaches others too. Third, budgets begin tightening. Travel gets reduced, training gets paused, approvals that used to be quick suddenly need more sign-off. None of this feels alarming on its own, but together it is telling you something. The business is feeling pressure, and it is starting to respond. At this point, nothing looks serious, which is exactly why most people miss it. This stage is usually the longest, sometimes 3 months, sometimes more. Nothing has changed for them yet, so they assume nothing is changing at all. Stage two, the company adjusts. This is where things become more visible. You notice the company is actively trying to adapt. First, hiring slows down. Roles that were open go quiet. Positions stay unfilled longer than expected. You hear things like, "We are holding off for now," because companies almost always slow down hiring before they reduce headcount. Second, skills start getting mapped. Cross-training increases. Role reviews begin. You may be asked to list your skills, rate your proficiency, or take on responsibilities outside your normal scope. Sometimes this is genuine development, but during uncertain periods, it can also help leadership understand how work can be redistributed with fewer people. Third, projects begin shifting. Long-term initiatives get paused. Priorities get reshuffled. Some work just disappears, and no one really talks about it. And when the work disappears, the role becomes harder to defend. You may also notice your workload changing, not necessarily harder or easier, just narrower. When new work stops arriving, growth may have already slowed. Fourth, performance gets more visible, more tracking, clearer KPI, more frequent check-ins. Suddenly, more people are being placed on performance plans. To be clear, performance cycles do not trigger layoffs. They make layoffs easier to justify. By the time a company reaches this stage, it is no longer asking if something needs to change. It is figuring out how. It is actively preparing for change. This stage moves faster, usually 1 to 3 months. Stage three, pressure builds. This is the stage most people remember, because this is the first time it actually affects people directly. The final stage usually feels different. So first, the pressure for efficiency gets louder, doing more with less, leaner operations, maximizing output. Sometimes this comes with new tools, sometimes with process changes, but the message underneath is usually the same. We need to run with fewer resources. Second, communication starts to thin out. Updates become less detailed. Questions get vaguer answers. Leaders stop committing to specifics. Managers often seem different, more careful, more formal, more distant. Sometimes they know something is coming, but cannot say it. Third, quiet preparation begins. Closed-door meetings increase. HR becomes more visible. Managers seem unusually occupied. Sudden calendar blocks appear. Something is clearly moving behind the scenes. You may not know what it is, but people can feel the shift. By the time it feels that way, many decisions are usually already made. At this point, even if business conditions improve, the process often keeps moving. The plan has already been set in motion. It is no longer about if, it is about when. This phase is short, a few weeks, maybe slightly longer, which is why, when it finally happens, it still feels sudden. Execution. Why it feels sudden. When the announcement comes, it feels like it happened overnight, but the process has been building for months. The early stages were slow, quiet, easy to explain away, but the final stage moves fast. Once the decisions are aligned internally, execution happens quickly, and usually without warning. Emails sent early in the morning, or over the weekend. Access revoked almost immediately. No chance to go back and retrieve anything. And just like that, one part of your identity is gone. The part people do not talk about what people lose is not only income, it is routine, confidence, identity, the version of life that felt stable last week. That is why layoffs hit harder than spreadsheets can measure. To the company, it may be restructuring. To the individual impacted, it hits personally, and for those who remain, there is another feeling people rarely discuss: relief mixed with anxiety, gratitude mixed with fear. They kept their job, but now they know how fragile it can be, and now they understand it was never sudden at all. Closing. Not every company that shows these signals will lay people off, and the timeline is never exactly the same. But the pattern is real, and it is more common than most people think. The signs are usually there. Most people just do not recognize them early enough. The mistake most people make is waiting until it feels obvious, because by the time it does, it is usually already decided. You may not be able to control what the company does, but you can control how prepared you are. And that is why preparation matters most before the moment arrives. Update your resume. Strengthen your network. Document your wins. Build options before you need them. Because in modern work, awareness is not paranoia, it is protection.